have everyone again. I need a motion to, it was a short meeting.
I keep making motions. I'll make a motion to adopt those.
Okay, and Mr. Napolitano, are you seconding that?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. August 8th meeting, Board of Fire Commissioners. Attending that meeting, it looks like everybody was at that one too.
I'm not making this motion.
Okay,
Make a motion to pass.
okay, so that's Jerry, and seconded by Mr. Stiegelman. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, aye. So then we have the August 27th, Board of Fire Commissioners, all except Mr. O'Hare was there. Mr. O'Hare was absent. And so I look for a motion to
I make the motion to
Mr.
accept it.
Stiegelman.
I'll second that one.
Seconded by Mr. Baker. All in favor? Aye. Okay, so those minutes are good. And we can email copies of the minutes to anybody who wants them. So, that's that done. I'll skip my chairman's, we've had an extremely busy several months since the beginning of the year. We can go over what we've constantly running into little snags as we go along and trying to work our way through them, but we've had an extremely busy time. The North End Firehouse, we went out to contract in the beginning of the year. That construction's going on. Jerry Napolitano will explain how that's going. We executed a CBA earlier in the year, and that all went well. We instituted a series of accounting and controls for our accounting front office, and that's all going well. So our three main goals that we had for this year, we're pretty much working our way through in a pretty effective manner. We've hired a law firm from upstate New York to handle all the matters we're dealing on, and we're keeping them quite busy because we have a number of matters we're working on. Tonight, John Molazari is going to present our budget for 2014 proposed, and what we'll do is we'll adopt that budget, then we'll have a hearing, a workshop and a hearing, but we have to offer out a budget at this time. It has to be done early in September. We're going to discuss tonight some problems we've had with our night ship, which is our insurance plan for the current members and the retirees. We've uncovered a particularly thorny billing issue involving certain retirees, about 20 of them. And so we've discussed this at a meeting last month. It wasn't televised, but I think the public has a right to know what we found and how we're trying to remediate it. Is it a material amount of money? This year we've put our accounting system has been on QuickBooks, but we completely redid the QuickBooks. John Molazari, working with an outside consultant, has rebuilt 2012 and forward, so we now have complete reconciliation of our bank statements and our income ledger. We've changed some, we replaced some personnel in the front office who we had a woman who was an intermediate typist leave us, and we hired Mary Lou Falcone, who has been wonderful at reorganizing the office. We've settled litigation with a firefighter. We've filed a Form AUD with the state, which was a fairly complicated problem. We've had issues with the health department and PESH, which we resolved successfully without any problems. We restructured our bank accounts and reorganized our bank statements and the delivery of the bank statements. We reorganized the files and the file room in the front office. And we appointed a hearing officer in a workman's compensation claim, which we were successful at adjudicating, where we've now saved the district money going forward on that issue. Station 5 is moving forward. We reviewed night ship and we reviewed workman's compensation. So those are the high points, and we've had tons of little other things that have happened and some material other things that have happened throughout the course of the summer and spring. So the board has been very effective and very busy, I believe. And that's where we are. So I can go into the night ship issue now, or I can discuss, I guess now is as good a time as any to discuss it. We learned that night ship, the insurance company, is supposed to bill the retirees for their health care, for their family plan. So if you're a retired fireman in Eastchester Fire District and you're a single person, you automatically get health care. If you have a family, you're supposed to pick up some of the costs of the family plan. When you get out-processed from the fire department, night shift forms get processed. And in the processing of those forms, we advise night shift to take the money out of your pension plan. And then we never see it again. Night shift credits the insurance carrier, and then that's how our billing statement comes back to us. Auditing the billing statements this year, and we had the chief and John and had concerns over the different pay structures we were paying relative to the number of people we knew to be on different plans. Further investigation revealed there are roughly 20 retirees that have family members were not being billed for that portion of their billing. So they're supposed to make a contribution for their insurance, that we weren't billing them for that contribution, nor was night shift.
26.
Excuse me?
26.
Yeah, roughly 26 members over time. The magnitude of the problem, if you go back 6 years, is about $450,000. If you go back roughly 12 years, it's about $810,000 of fire district failing to bill. So it took a lot of work to go through all those employees, because not just the ones who haven't been billing, we had to go through all the employees, all the retired employees, all the retired records, all night shift's records, and then get a true understanding what night shift actually bills and how they billed. And night shift for us wasn't a perfectly transparent agency, because night shift is only going to communicate with an administrator, quote administrator, not with me. They're not going to communicate with a board member. They're not going to only going to communicate pretty much with the chief, who we made the administrator. So early in the year, we made chief the administrator of night shift. We made him the administrator of the workman's comp. We pretty much made him the administrator of everything that we have control over. And therefore, we had to reconstruct all these different accounts, and we brought in a fella who is a part-time consultant to organize the information and the data and to go through every file to find out what we had in each file, what forms we had, what we were missing. And where we are in the process now is we sent out a letter that went out this morning to all the retirees that we believe should be paying. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask those retirees to get current for now. So we're asking them to pay their September premium, their October premium in one payment, and come November, we'd like them to pay the first of the month, because night shift requires first of the month payment in order to carry a member on the policy. So we're asking, about 20 letters went out this morning, and they went out to the former members asking them to get current. We haven't sent them letters to what we believe they owe going back yet. We've also sent along with that letter a request that they fill out a form so we can have night shift bill them directly, and then we don't have to be involved in the process of them mailing us a check every month. So if they send us back the form that we can process through night shift directly, we will process them through night shift directly. And we want them to pay us until night shift puts them through and effectuates that transaction. So the retired membership that has not, and it requires, it's about 20 members, and they would be classified in the night shift system as A-pay category. And we're going to convert them with the night shift calls E-pen. And then it comes out to about $7,000 a month, which we're trying to get back online. As that process moves forward, we'll formalize sending out letters of request or payment plans for the balance due, and it can be substantial in some cases because it goes back a number of years. One of the things that happened in this, while we're on the same topic, I'll explain what we had an issue happen recently. And as you can guess, the boards has had several executive sessions over the course of the past several months, drilling down and a lot of time with counsel to learn how to proceed and how to do this effectively. We got in a mail this week a letter from the union's attorney, the firefighters union's attorney. That lawyer provided to us a document that had the social security numbers of roughly 22 former members
Two widowers.
and 2 widowers. We don't know how that law firm got that document, nor do we know why they would send us a document with the social security numbers of 22 people on it. So, what's that? It could be the weather. Yeah. So, we don't know how this law firm got the document. We don't know. We told the board members that were in the meeting. No board member is saying they passed the document. So it's going to require the department now to conduct an internal investigation, because we know it was faxed from a fire department fax machine. We know it came from the captain's office. We know what time it was sent. We have a lot of facts about how that document left us. We don't know why it would have been sent to the law firm from our equipment, and we don't know. It's a mystery to us. So it's going to require us to do, on top of all the other things we're working on, it also comes with an obligation for us to notify these retirees that their Social Security numbers were released by whoever. So, which led us to a whole new set of laws that we learned about and obligations. So we're processing that, which is more legal time than billing time. Fortunately, we have a law firm that specializes in this law, and we can process it. So, in the next, can you hear me? Are you okay? He can hear me. So that's where we are. So we're going to be sending letters out again to the retirees this time, just advising them of the issue, and then we'll be conducting an investigation, starting with whoever was working, I guess, that tour, and notifying appropriate law enforcement. That's where we are. So that's the night ship issue, just the one issue we're working on. So on the other remarks, the good stuff is the Station 5 construction is moving along, and we're hopeful to be in there by November 1st, and Jerry will explain all that. And I'll just go now to the chief's report from here and let people digest what I just said.
Yes, Commissioner, I'll just keep my part a little brief here. Basically, it's covering both July and August. Total alarms for the 2 months for 542. Actually, a little quiet for the summer, fortunately. Mostly a lot of EMS because of maybe extreme heat or whatever. 13 fire-related calls, only 1 mutual aid response. Although, that's, we're lucky that way. Shop reports submitted. Annual pump testing was all completed over the summer. That's, everything was recertified. Big part due to the regular maintenance performed by our mechanic. He keeps it all up and running. At present, we do have now at this time 2 pumpers or 2 engines awaiting brake work done on the brakes. One is being held up due to an availability issue for parts. We have one part that we do expect to be in. The mechanic is actually presently on vacation, so the hope is that it'll be here. There is another engine that sits one out. That's basically ready to go. When he gets in, the parts are all in-house and ready to be put back together when he comes back. Or we'll find an outside repair facility. Fire prevention, code enforcement, as usual, kept very busy, even over the summer. Made good headway on that, the request, while a lot of documents were in hand with as far as the hazardous materials in town and any specific or concerns that we might have. They've been busy updating all the 209Us, which is another form of that's submitted regularly. They're also going out and just trying to identify any possible thing. Really what we're finding is, the usual, service stations, of course, are going to have a certain amount of product around that could be considered a hazard, but nothing at this point has really come out that we would have major concern. I know a lot of people were worried after that explosion out west or something. We do have issues, with hardware stores or even school science labs, but they've been making good progress with putting that list together so that we'll have all these locations identified.
Okay, what happened there was we got after the Texas explosion, that fertilizer plant blew up next to a school, and the question came up, okay, do we have any areas that we have very combustible stuff that we need to worry about, and are we monitoring it closely? And apparently there's these state forms that get filed to, that the town gets a copy of, we get a copy of, and fortunately our fire prevention area, as far as department, that's extremely well organized. About 3 years ago, Captain, maybe even longer, maybe 5 years ago now, Lieutenant Pintaval moved into that slot, and he has that office extremely well organized. If anybody has had any communication with fire prevention as far as oil tanks and all those type of things, he's very responsive and very organized. So the board asked the chief to make sure we had that under control, and apparently we do.
Yes, they're making good progress there, and now at the same time, here we are, almost middle of September. Just keep in mind, they will now be gearing up for a very busy month of October, which is associated with fire prevention. They call it Fire Prevention Week, but it is a full month of activity, and they always do a great job with that too. Somebody might have noticed some boxes in the front. They've got all the supplies that they'll be handing out during that time. Of course, Station 5, everybody's talking about the work. I'll just say the work's progressing, I believe, very well. Looks to be on schedule, like you said, maybe by the end of next month. There's going to be finished work. I'm sure Commissioner Napolitano might have a little more to add to it. And then, really, just much of the time, like you said, the summer's been quite busy on our end, just trying to keep everything going. I thank Deputy Treasurer John Malasardi, Commissioner Winters, Chairman, extensive amount of time. From me, I will say I appreciate greatly. Basically, things are cleaning up, the functions of front office, payroll, billing, everything else, and, hopefully things wind down a little bit. That's all for now, sir.
Okay.
If there is a communication that doesn't have to go out, but maybe later on with regards to Civic Association.
We have the usual request of Civic Association using the Chester Heights Firehouse for their annual Halloween party.
It actually doesn't even have to be dealt with this month because there's still going to be October.
But we've got their request, and there's no reason not to let them use
We
the
actually
house.
already have the certificate of liability insurance covering us in place, so.
Okay, so that'll move along. So now we'll present John Molazari. He's going to give us the Deputy Treasurer is going to give us the reconciliations and the budget, I guess. Your copies of your budget.
Good evening. I'm going to start with the 2014 budget presentation. The copies up front, all the commissioners can have a copy of it. This budget shows a tax increase year over year of 4.76. That's a tax levy increase, that's not a tax rate. In this budget is a 2.5% contract raise for 2014. This is effective 1/1/2014. This budget also includes a retirement increase from 9% due to the CBA contract. We've had 4 years of the CBA contract. The fifth year will come. That's not in this budget, the fifth year. And we're compounding the overtime fees and everything. We're thinking it's 9%. It also includes a 5% increase from the state. The state's come out with a reduction, but I'm waiting to see if they really do it. They fall for it. The medical premium, let me just back up a second. The budget for the fire district is about $13 million, which has to do with salary and employee benefits. So about 80% of the budget is in that area. So the areas that I concern myself with is retirement salaries, in medical. The medical premium for the district is going to go up 5%. We've received something from night shift. They give you 3 scenarios. They give you an optimistic scenario, which was 3%. They give you a pessimistic scenario, which was 8%. And they call an average scenario in the middle, 5%. So I use the average. Also in this budget is, Dennis referred to it a little earlier, the medical premiums being collected from the retirees that have not been billed in the past. There's $72,000 in there this year. I used $6,000 a month, Dennis said $7,000. Also included in this budget is something new the district's never had. It's called a contingency account. And in that account is $132,000, which represents about 0.8 of 1% of the total budget. It's really to cover, when you do a budget, it's a projection, things change along the way, and it gives the commissioners something to work with and use if something happens. Legal fees, certiorari, some of the things that the village can't control. Also in this budget is every year the budget includes $100,000 that we use for long-term apparatus purchases, or house purchases, or repairs. That's in there. The document that's in front of you is a quick books document. What I asked you to look at is the last 3 columns for percentages. The column, the third one over to the right, is called percentage difference 2013 to 2014. And tells you what the difference is year over year. The next column to the right is 2014 total. So what that does is take each line and divide it by the total. So like, I'll use real property taxes. In 2014, it represents 99.09% of our revenue budget. The next column is 2013. Same calculation using it. And just for argument's sake, I'll talk about real estate taxes. In 2013, it represented 99.38. So when you look at those 2 columns, what I look at is see, when you go down the line, I missed something there that was a one-timer, and all the columns are very close. So those columns I use to measure how the budget is done. This is a draft. Our total budget is going to be $16,882,000, projected to be $16,882,000.
John, 16 million?
16 million.
13.
No, you're saying thousands.
Oh, sorry. 16 million. I stand corrected.
Okay. Now, John, the process for adopting this budget is we have to have a meeting on August 15th, right? A workshop on October 15th, we have to have a workshop, and that's a date set up by law that has to be on that date to have that workshop, I believe. And then after that workshop, we have to give public notice prior to that workshop. And then when we go to approve the budget, we have to give public notice and post also on the town's website, if possible, the budget itself. So there's some mechanical publications and notifications we have to give, but pretty much this document is for the board to review. This document is for the board to review to determine what line items we want to adjust up or down to come in more reasonably or whatever we need to do. But this is your synopsis of if you took this year and rolled it ahead a year, what it would look like.
Correct. Correct. And most of the large increases are going to be in the, the personnel area.
Right,
Just because of the contract.
right. And now the contract, so people understand the contract, we did a contract this year that went for 2010, 11, and 12, 13, and 14. The first 3 years were 1.5, 1.5, and 1.5. And then we, for 13 and 14, was 2.5 and 2.5. So it was 1.5, 1.5, 1.5, then 2.5 and 2.5. That was the math in the contract, which was competitive to what, the other municipalities were doing in Westchester County or the New Rochelle, what the other districts were doing. I think it was a competitive contract. So that's where we are. And any board comments or any? No. So we'll welcome public comments after you had time to digest it. We'll come back on the 15th and review it and modify what we need to modify or change. Now, the bank reconciliations you also gave us.
I did, those were up there. I didn't make copies of them because they're like 80 pages each, so I asked each one to review it and sign off on them. We now have 4 bank accounts. Each one is reconciled. It's June and July there. We haven't done August yet. So, and then we can put it on the web or whatever we do with it, at that point.
Okay, and the point, just so we go over this again, so people understand, because we haven't been on TV all that often, so we opened the 4 bank accounts because what we used to do, the payroll service used to have power of attorney to directly tap our bank account for whatever they sent money out for. And we've now changed it to where we have a limited amount in the bank account, we fund the bank account, and then they tap that bank account that we fund. You can explain it, John, better than I can probably.
Yeah, what we did, before we had one account with all the money in it. Now, we use a reputable payroll processor, but that's still not good internal control. So what we did is we broke out the apparatus fund. We set up an investment account that earns a little bit more interest. There's not a lot out there, but a little more than what we were getting. And we have a payroll account. So every 2 weeks, what we do the payroll on Tuesday, we get it back on Wednesday. I do the number, and then I just double check by somebody in the office if it's the right number. Then we transfer that money in to the penny into the payroll account. So when they come in, and it's not power of attorney, it's automated clearinghouse, it's an ACH debit. It's an electronic debit that we give. We notify Chase is our bank, so we allow them as an originating ID for each of the people that can go into our account. So Chase is aware who can ACH debit our account. And they can't get any more than the payroll if somebody happens to, steal it or anything. But, we think we have fraud protection, so we think we've covered that base.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for John?
I know this is a draft. Do we know how this plays in with the 2% cap and?
Well, good question. What's going to happen is, that's the perfect question, Mike. There's a New York State law has a tax cap at 2%. What we need is a procedure if the board chooses to exceed the cap. And then we have to have at the hearing, before we adopt this budget, we would have to have a public hearing to exceed the cap. Or it could be at the same meeting, but you have to vote to go over the cap, and then you can pass a budget in excess of the cap, as long as you have, on fire boards, they say 60%, which is the normal passage anyway. 3 members have to vote to exceed the cap.
Okay, but also, and John, I don't know, in other words, there's usually an allowance. In other words, it's not necessarily 2%. Do we have a number yet that they're?
This year?
Yeah.
You thought 2% was bad? It's 1.66 this year. So the cap has been lowered for the taxpayer. What we can.
It's actually less than 2?
Yes, it is. It's 1.66.
Right. So if the board chooses not to exceed the cap, we'll have to come in at 1.66.
Doesn't mean anything anyway.
Yes.
Got it. And so, yeah, then council is advising on how that works.
Yeah.
All right. And, well, thank you very much, John. And,
I was going to do the actual to budget through August.
okay, that's fine. Yep,
Up here?
do that.
We also have to appropriate that money.
We also have to adopt this budget for tonight,
Right. Okay.
the proposed budget. Okay? Why don't you do the, year-to-date? We'll do the year-to-date.
This is the actual to budget comparison through the month of August. Currently, we're running a budget deficit of about $12,000. That's made up of revenue being short. This is through the end of August. Revenue is short about $786,000. $772,000 of that is the collection of real estate taxes. Town paid us 94%, I believe, in May. Through this month, we haven't gotten anything else. September 3rd, we received $620,000, which isn't here. I do make note of it here that we do have it now. That leaves us about $150,000 to collect. So that deficit is a misnomer in the sense it's a timing of the cash flow for the tax collections. On the expenditure side, we're under budget by $774,000. So we're short on the revenue, but we're also under on the expenses. A lot of that comes from the account. The accountants have finished our audit for 2012. That's a little further down the report, but I'll tell you now that we've received an unqualified opinion. And when they come in to do the audit, at the end, some of these GASB adjusting entries they prepare, a lot of it had to do with the retro pay and how we allocate it from year to year. So what happens is, because of the way retro pay is done, there were some credits to our salary expense accounts and some overtime lines. So that helped us a little bit in this number here. That's the good side of the equation. There are a couple of accounts that we continue to talk about. Overtime is a touchy one. We're bumping up against the limit that the board has set. We will probably, at the end of the month, bump up against it again. The board will have to make a resolution to either, increase it or limit the amount of overtime. And the other one is on disabled firemen. Dennis referred to that earlier. We did have a settlement with one of the firemen, and our disabled fire account got charged that amount, which was not in the budget. So at some point here in the next month, we will have to do a budget transfer to put the money back in so the line gets back in line again, and that's $150,000 approximately. And I mentioned the audit is done. We met with them. The report is forthcoming. I saw the draft of it. So once the report is issued and everybody's had a chance to look at it, they'll be invited to a public meeting to present the audit.
Yeah. We've been going back and forth with the auditing firm over the language since we found the irregularities that we believe are material in the health care payments, that we had to put them on full disclosure of. But at the same time, we were careful on how we worded that to them because they've been the auditors for a long period of time. So I'll leave it at that. So I think the bottom line here is on the monthly reporting is that we're now getting pretty good detailed reports on where we are per line, and I think we're getting a pretty good handle on where we are versus, and by the time year end runs around, we'll have a much better handle exactly on what the through year numbers look like. So, all good.
What I was going to say, Dennis, is, in the past, the district used to hire an accounting firm to do the budget. We did the budget in-house. This draft came in-house, so we didn't end up paying any accounting firm to do the budget this year.
Right. This budget was done by John and using QuickBooks and using the past histories, and John put it all together. So the goal here is the accounting, when we hire an accounting firm next year to do the audit, they will truly be doing an audit. They won't be doing the accounting and the auditing. They'll simply only be auditing because they won't have their hands in the numbers. And that's kind of our goal. All good?
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. So, do you want to adopt the budget at the end of the meeting after the public session, or you might as well? After?
After public session, yeah.
Okay, so remember, we need to do it, though. The law requires us to adopt it. Okay, so we'll move on to reports, and we'll get you in a few minutes, Tommy. Well, actually, Tommy, Local 916, would you like to come up now?
My name is Tom Cusack. I'm the Vice President of Local 916. And just to address your comments, John, if I may, it's been my experience with the budget previously. The budget that you adopt tonight, does this have to be voted on tonight?
We're going to vote to adopt it.
Okay. Is it a fact that if you adopt this budget, you can't increase it, it can only be lowered?
I've heard that in the past. I'm not 100% convinced that's correct. But we're supposed to, the law requires by September 24th to adopt a budget for a local fire district. So we've asked John to create the budget, and I don't think we'll be increasing this budget, unless there's a
I'm just wondering if
desire.
that was a fact. You don't know it to be a fact, I don't know it to be a fact.
I think you can move line item to line item. I think you can move line item to line item, but I don't know if you can go above an adopted budget in the way this process works.
Okay. And to say that we did not pay for the budget, I don't mean to disagree with you, but we are paying a secretary that is not working right now, and we're paying you on an hourly rate. So I believe we did pay.
Right. We were paying, obviously it wasn't done for free, but we're not using the auditing firm to do the budget this
We did not pay the
year.
auditor, but we did pay
Right.
John.
Right, we had an independent
Just paying
source rather than the
somebody else.
auditing firm.
Okay. A couple other things. You went through a whole bunch of fiduciary responsibilities and what the board has accomplished this year. And we brought this issue up last month, but I don't think the follow-up question was asked. The union secured a grant for $117,000 to the department. Some way, somehow, a glitch occurred. We lost the grant. We had the opportunity to reapply. Why didn't we?
Yeah, to me, that we had a number of issues in the past getting things accomplished. There's no argument with that. We're beyond that, and there's no sense looking back to find out what happened, and this thing probably originally started in 2009 when Jeff Klein was still the
We secured the
senator.
grant through Senator Klein's office.
Yeah, it was probably in 2009. And so,
We actually didn't lose it until fairly recent.
no, you lost it over a year ago. It was well over a year ago. And we can't rehash it, Tommy. We got to move on. We want to get stuff fixed and moved on. We can't go back and rehash who dropped the paperwork there, because I'm sure there's plenty of, I'm sure you have an opinion on who to blame, and we'll have an opinion, but it doesn't get us anywhere.
Place blame. I'm not looking to place blame. I'm looking to find out why we did not reapply for a grant that was in our hands. That's all. In the December meeting, the November and the December meetings, and actually all of last year and the previous years, we have always received a report stating how much the district actually has in their accounts. As of this year, we have not received those reports, and I think the number back in December was like $6.2 million.
Yeah, well, that was just basically how much money we have in the box, or rocks in the box, if you want to do it. We know the number. If anybody wants to stop in and see John when he's working, he'll give you the exact balance in each of the accounts.
But how come we're not getting those reports now?
Oh, because what we were getting for a treasurer's report then was a one-line number. Now we're getting detailed, detailed reports on where we
Are
are.
we still in the vicinity of $6 million, or obviously we settled the contract, that had to
No, I
take
think
a
we're in
bite
the-
out of it, and
It depends where we are in the time of the year, you see, because
Today,
if you looked at
today.
where we were, in April, we were down to probably $2 million before we did the tax anticipation note. And I think it's where is it today, John? I don't know off the top of my head. I'm going to guess 4 to 5.
With the apparatus account, I say we're about 11, 12 million, 11.5 million. Well, July is where it's about that.
Okay,
Yeah, 3,533,000 for.
that's in the one
June.
account.
One account. 3,500,000 for one account.
But remember, Tommy, it's different this year now than in the past because the town has funded us. The way it used to work is the town used to send you $1 million. Basically, they took the year and divided it by 12, or roughly they divided it by 12, and they sent you in $1.2 million a month, or whatever that tax levy divided by 12 was. They used 14 pay periods, but they divided the year roughly by 12, and they sent us in $1.2 million a year, so you could calculate where you were. Now, the way it works is They shoot us 90%. I think they gave us 93% on May 15th or May 10th. We have to carry ourselves to next year using that number. So we're going to deplete, and our lowest point will be sometime around, 2 weeks before they pay us next time.
Right.
So we'll be back down again next year. So you can't compare how much money we have in the bank now and compare it against where we had this time last year, because the town was funding us in a totally different way last year.
But the budget supports, the money the district is paying you supports the budget.
Right, but if you look at the...
So the reserve account should stay relatively solid.
Provided, well, we have a reserve account that's the same. The $1.2 million for the apparatus reserve is pretty much the same. It was 1.1, it moved to 1.2 when we put the $100,000 in. But the balance in our account was added, as soon as the town sent in their $14-odd million, we had $14 million in the bank. We're going to spend that every 2 weeks mostly for salary.
Right, so you project it out over the year. That you, like you said, it's going to
Yeah.
be projected. So we should have somewhere around $5 million still.
Well, we're going to have more. He thinks we have
We'll have more. So we have underspent the budget this year. I mean, where I'm going with this is where we have a lot of problems with the overtime. You constantly sliding money, and there's always talk of, what are we going to do next? But
Well, I think we're...
taxpayers should be aware of the fact that the money is there to support it.
Is the question, it's a roundabout way of getting your overtime question. One of the questions we did last year, the board cut the overtime number in the budget as a means of trying to control overtime. And I think it's the board's thought, and guys here can lobby in, that, a lot of membership bangs in sick from time to time. And we're trying to control that. And so we control it there's only one way to control it: a contract negotiation on sick leave or on cutting back the overtime budget. I think that was a negotiating point the board decided, was just cut the overtime budget, and it's easier than trying to negotiate the sick leave policy. I think that's where we came from. I mean,
So you
overtime is
cut the
mostly
overtime budget
generated,
in half.
our overtime is mostly generated from guys banging in sick. Wasn't half.
I didn't hear what you said.
It was not
It
half.
was not half.
Oh, it went from 700 to 475?
Right, and we brought it back up to 535, I believe.
So
Is that
less than...
I'm just wondering if that number, again, you're over that number. Is that number sufficient to support?
We'll have to, on a month-by-month basis, we'll have to see. But Tommy, you know as well as I do what the issues are. I mean, I don't need to debate them here. You know the issues, you see
I'm
them.
not going to debate them here. I mean, we had many long-term injuries this year. Yes, it was an odd year.
Okay, we don't need to debate them here. We can move on.
Okay, moving forward with the fiduciary responsibilities of the board. There are two issues in which the board spent significant money regarding independent reports. We spent, I think, $15,000 on one report that was a management communication report that goes back about 4 or 5 years. I know the person that was doing the report has been paid, and yet we don't have the report.
It was deemed a personnel matter, and it was never released.
How can a communications report be deemed personnel?
It was our attorney advised us at the time it's personnel. We go by what they say. If you guys want to foil it and don't work out, you can Article 70, you can go out and appeal it, and then you bring in Article 78, and the judge can make a determination.
I think we're missing the two, because that's the next one. That was the next report that you did. You did a follow-up report that had to do with communications between the chief and the captain.
You'd have to, Tommy, this is stuff going back, how many years was this done? 2007, 2008? When was it done?
This is ongoing. This has been ongoing. It hasn't died back then. I mean,
Okay.
Again, you're talking about you have accomplished so much. I mean, these are things that the taxpayers have paid for, and yet we don't have access to these reports. And the union was very active in this report.
Right.
And we were told you will receive it, and we haven't.
Okay, well, our counsel advised us.
Moving forward, we're not going to get it, I understand that. There are many outstanding grievances. I'm not going to go through them. Hopefully, we can meet and get those resolved. I know I have a meeting with 2 commissioners next month, but again, the grievance process.
Next month is next week.
Next week.
Next week.
Next week,
You
Tuesday,
said
right?
next month.
Right.
Oh,
And we-
sorry,
Yes.
I apologize.
No, I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Tuesday, we have a meeting on Tuesday.
Yeah, and hopefully the chief will be at that meeting with you guys.
Why is the chief there?
The chief is the chief of the department. I would think he'd be there at the meeting if you're grieving
We're having-
something about a work-related problem.
Okay, well, he could come in during that, but we have a meeting with the union has asked for a meeting with the chairman of the paid man's committee.
Okay.
The last thing, I would just like to state that after last meeting, I did a lot of thinking. I mean, the PJ issue was very upfront and focused. And, you know, I began to think about what happened to him and about what happens here. And the last member of this union that tried to get a work-related disability was actually out of work here for 3 years. And there was no effort whatsoever to fire that gentleman, that firefighter. And I'm just wondering why firefighter Maldiri was not offered the same respect. And let the process, let the New York State process work its way out. Because he was going out one way or the other. There was really no reason to fire him. You gave the respect to the other firefighter that tried to do it for 3 years. I don't think you gave firefighter Maldiri 1 day after his year was up. And I think that's wrong.
Okay, volunteers report.
Good evening, gentlemen. We recessed for the summer for July and August. In the month of July, we had a Mamaroneck parade. The volunteers attended it with the antique apparatus, and we had no representation from the Board of Fire Commissioners. We also, during the summer, gave out 3 scholarships, 1 to each student from Tuckahoe, Eastchester, and Bronxville high schools. I brought this matter to the chief last week on September 29th at 11 o'clock. As a member of the American Legion and the VFW, between the 2 posts, we are naming the railroad bridge in Tuckahoe the Gold Star Mother's Day, which is Gold Star Mother's Day, but we are naming the bridge Gold Star Mother's Bridge. And it's going to be done on September 29th at 11 a.m. Now, we're asking all you commissioners as elected officials from the town to give a little respect and come. We don't want this to be another Memorial Day. It's only going to take about an hour. We're going to have dignitaries there. We're going to have press there. And this is a real tribute to those mothers who lost their sons and daughters, who saw them take off from the train station from World War I right up to the present time. So I only think for 1 hour on Sunday, and I don't want to hear that you guys went away to Long Island or up the country to your summer home. 1 hour is all that's required. On Sunday the 29th, and refreshments will be served at the VFW post above Piper's Kilt. Thank you. One other thing. We were wondering why the meetings aren't going to be on the TV anymore.
Well, during the summer, we had meetings.
Is this one on TV?
This one's televised.
And
Yeah.
all the rest will be televised?
They'll be televised if we have regular monthly meetings. The summer
Okay.
meetings are slightly different.
Then I misunderstood. I heard that there was not going to be no more televised commissioners' meetings.
Now, when we meet at the firehouse, because we meet in Station 1.
That I understand, but I meant like these monthly meetings will be televised?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And Mary Marvin, the mayor of Bronxville, has been extremely gracious and has made, offered us to use these quarters. And, but
Right.
in the summertime when it's hot, they have to air condition the
understand.
rooms, and we
I
feel it's
understand
inappropriate at some point.
Okay, once again, before I sit down, that invitation is extended from the American Legion and the VFW post in Eastchester to you commissioners. Commissioner Baker, I'm sure you're aware of all this from
I
the
am.
different meetings, but
Yeah.
I do hope you gentlemen would come. For 1 hour, it won't hurt.
Anthony, real quick, did you guys do anything with your tax ID?
We're working on it, and our lawyers had a hard time with the New York State and the federal on it, but he's working on it, and he said hopefully he's gonna try to have it by the end of the year.
And that wasn't any issue that you gave out those scholarships without a tax ID?
No, it wasn't. We checked on that before we did that.
Okay.
Okay,
I know it's taken a long time. I personally myself asked, Act of Congress don't even take this long. Why this is taking long, I don't know. But he showed us reports when he's called. They put him on hold as much as 30 minutes. And like he says, how much time do I have to wait for 30 minutes before they get back to me? He's called 2 or 3 times during the week, and he gets no response. But he is working on it.
Thanks.
okay. Committee reports, we'll go into committee reports now. So we have career firefighter, which is Mr. Baker.
Commissioner, the only thing we have is, we have a meeting set up for now you got me doing it, September 17th at 8 a.m. at Tuckahoe Firehouse, and we're going to try to have a regular date for a monthly in the fire department. The members will let us know if we need to meet or not. That's my understanding. Is that yours? Okay, all right. That's all I have.
Okay. Volunteers report, Mr. Stiegelman?
I have no report. I just have one question for, did you get the tax ID number yet?
I just told Commissioner Napolitano, the lawyer is working on it.
Oh, he's working on it. Okay.
Okay. House and apparatus, Mr. Napolitano?
Progress is pretty good. Better than I thought this last 2 weeks, quite honestly. I was just discussing with the chief what him and I thought the level of progress that they've done, and we both kind of agreed it's at about 65% right now. Everything's sealed up on the most part. The kitchen isn't in, or the cabinetry, but lighting's pretty much all sealed up. We've got some painting to do.
Still painting, there is still, the work, the downstairs bathroom is
Bathroom.
just, they wanted to get the upstairs actually working. Of course, the kitchen.
HVAC is
the
in, but not all
kitchen,
terminated.
right,
So-
the kitchen work, the cabinetry, they're actually being fabricated, it says commercial grade stainless
Yeah,
steel.
so we upgraded the cabinetry. Originally, it was wood core. We're going with stainless core for durability. In addition to that, I just lost my train of thought. We're already starting to consider the appliances that we're going to be putting into the firehouse. So we're moving along. If you guys noticed, there was scaffolding on the outside. So that went along in parallel. We actually thought that was going to happen after we actually even moved into the firehouse. So that's actually part of the project that we wanted to do, and after, even though maybe we had firefighters in there because we thought it would take that long, but that's progressing in parallel. So that'll be done relatively quick as well. Did they cut? I didn't see if they cut in the door to the balcony. Did they?
Oh, that was done 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Actually,
I didn't see
it's
that.
coming out, that actually looks like it's coming out very nicely. It's like 2 steps up, nice, the whole roof area is covered with decking. I haven't seen the railing on yet.
Yeah, that he had an order. I know it was special order.
Right,
It's steel work.
yes.
So the bottom line is the Station 5 house is moving. We anticipated it would take, optimistically 4 to 5 months, and it looks like he's doing it in 4 to 5 months. And he's doing it in a nice manner.
We're planning to notify the landlord of Summerfield termination of that lease by November 1st at the latest.
And the trailer, to the trailer and we'll take the trailer probably slightly before the lease is up.
Be able to meet our 3-year anniversary, it looks like, hopefully.
Yeah. So I think it's going along particularly well, and we've received some input from the membership that we've responded to, and I think it's going along perfectly well.
Double sync.
Budget and finance, we discussed most of it all earlier. That's myself. Commissioner O'Hare is not here for communications. I don't know if we had any other than Chief Grogan mentioned. Grant committee, Mr. Napolitano?
No news on grant committee. No.
We're, health and wellness and technology, you're up for twice.
Technology, nothing new. All I can say is, based on this information that John put together, I think it was really easy to do. And that really stems from us automating that entire process into a simple application such as QuickBooks. From a commissioner's perspective, I see a lot of value in the report that John gives us now. In the past, it was just a single line item. we really didn't know what codes were being used for accounting and then how they were all being separated and what the total amount rolls up to. Now we see all that. So visibility is much better. And I attribute that to us automating that process.
Also, we're using Google Cloud for all our document retrieval and document processing. So when we had a lot of this recovery stuff, Jerry instituted Google Cloud about a year and a half ago. So if we need to communicate with the lawyer or wherever we are, we can shoot the documents back and forth. You can do it on your iPad, you can do it on your phone, you can do it, so we're pretty much mobile as far as communication. Anybody on the board, the chief, assistant chief, the captains, the documents are very, very mobile. So Google Cloud has been excellent for what we wanted to do and for email organization. So
We're able to share documents a lot easier electronically. We're fire commissioners. We're not in the firehouse every day, for exception of maybe Dennis. But the value that I see in the tools we implemented allows us to be a lot more visible to what's going on remotely, So it's a tremendous amount of value. Hopefully the department embraces it even further. I know the chief has, the assistant chief, including having a common calendar for everyone to monitor vacation time and things of that nature. So it's moving along.
So, communications, John, do we have any? We didn't have any communications to speak of. Okay, so now, for unfinished business, we have the election. The governor has not signed, to the best of my knowledge, the election law. I think where the clock is pretty much run out for a November election, so our election will be, unless I can see any objections to it, I think we're going to be having a December election, because if it was November, the county board of elections would have to approve it. I don't see them approving it this late stage. We're only 6 weeks away from the November election, roughly, right? And so we're going to have a December election, the second Tuesday in December. Anybody who's interested in running, they come in and get a petition from us. You get 25 names of any resident in town, 25 signatures. We'll provide you a petition. It's a simple form. No, nothing needs to be notarized. Just get 25 signatures with addresses on them of current residents and registered voters, hopefully, and you're on the ballot. So anybody who wants to be on this board, it's a 5-year seat, starts January 1, 2014, and runs 5 years. There's no compensation, there's no benefits, there's no, so it's pure public service. So I would encourage anybody who's interested to contact a board member, and we'll try to set you up with the documentation you need, or contact the chief. So I don't see us having a November being part. Next year, if the governor does not sign this bill, it'll automatically become law at the end of the year. And our elections, provided Westchester County agrees, Westchester County 2 commissioners, will be next year's general election. We need the sign-off from the Board of Elections in Westchester County, which I don't think will be an obstacle, but technically that's the way it works. Mr. Wolf's looking at me. No?
Did you say if the governor doesn't sign it?
If the governor doesn't sign it, I am told it automatically defaults and becomes law.
No, my
Doesn't?
understanding is that that's the equivalent of a pocket veto, and it would not be a law.
And that's not what Jerry, did you hear differently?
I heard similar stuff, but I'm not an expert there.
Yeah, I heard if he doesn't sign it, it automatically defaults.
We'll take this up under public discussion.
Okay, that's fine. So,
And
that's where we
Just to
are.
clarify, we can't move the election
We can't.
until it's signed by the
Yeah,
governor,
right,
because it's not
right.
a law.
Right, we cannot move it. In all likelihood, we have a December election this year.
Right.
So that's a given. We're going to have a December election. So second Tuesday in December, you can show up here or wherever you're supposed to show up and vote. Other unfinished business. We talked earlier in the year about replacing car 2102, which is our command car. The membership and the chief have worked out specs for this new command car. I think now that the North End Firehouse looks like we know where we stand as far as our variability of expense is pretty much down there. We got a pretty good idea where we are. We should probably ask the chief to move forward on going out to bid with the command car, unless anybody objects strongly.
No?
It's fine by me. I know it was put on hold. There were certain members that actually did a lot of work on it and have what I believe is a nice spec put together. And we'll move now that everything's looking okay.
Yeah, that's basically the first responder car that we have, the one that runs on most every call. So we'll start the process. It'll take 8 to 10 months to get this vehicle. We won't get it tomorrow. They got to go out for public bid, accept the public bids, and then that whole process. So it's still in it's just we should start the process. The next under, we just had a discussion with the Bronxville Police Chief about ID cards. Apparently, all the police departments in Westchester County have gotten together with Westchester County itself to issue ID cards, uniformed ID cards for all police officers regardless of where they work. We don't know if the same thing exists for fire departments, but we'd like to figure out if there's a way to get a unified ID card that's similar to the police departments have now in Westchester County. So hopefully we'll find a way if we can get that moving along so we can have unified ID cards that if you go to an incident out of your district, they recognize you as a police officer, or not a police officer, a firefighter, based on your card. We don't have that today. We have ID cards, but somebody might think you made them up at home. So, other new business, query numbers, calendar, override, tax receipts. Anybody else have any new business, any old business we need to talk about?
I don't.
Okay. Under new business, there was a request I heard today of converting the hose tower in Station 1 to a storage area of some sort. The idea is we have basically a room that's 14 by 14. That's a dormant room right now, and I spoke to the chief about it. We may be able to convert that room fairly inexpensively to a storage room of some sort.
Members have shown interest in trying. First of all, we realize this is the base or the first level of the hose tower. Hose tower being the way, years back, you used hose, you brought it back, you cleaned it, you hung it to dry, put on this
You hung it
different
3
hose.
stories.
The hose is not the same as the old days. You don't have to. We really don't hang hose anymore. There's been issues with the steps or the ladder, the landings going up to the top, so nobody's actually been able to use it for quite a while. And some members in the House have expressed interest in converting it into a closet for gear to keep it more rather than a basement. I have no issue, to me, if let them come up with something. We'll see if they can do something in-house. I'd be perfectly in favor with it.
The structural, it's gonna be a structural floor, so we gotta have a PE on it, a P signature on it.
Right, we should just have somebody bless that the structural members that we're putting the floor on are safe.
Or, I don't want,
Yeah,
we gotta put a P stamp on it.
Well, there's really only one area where the hose used to hang down that would need to be closed off with the rest of it.
That people would eventually be walking on, right?
Well,
We gotta look at it. Well,
Okay.
If it's structural and it's gonna bear weight, we just gotta get a PE signature on it.
you just get an engineer to bless it, that what we're gonna put there is gonna be blessed that, yep, that'll hold that weight, and we can do that. And then, I don't think there's an objection, as long as we get somebody to say we can put the weight on it.
at this point, since, it's really just coming up, let's
Yeah.
see them
It's a
draw
great-
something up. What are
It's
they
a-
actually
it's-
looking to do?
It's a great idea. I think we should act on it.
And
It's a
then
great idea.
we'll get somebody to draw up what would be code.
Okay, so those are that was my items for tonight, and any board member comments or any other new business?
We can touch, the stall generator.
Well, we already approved that at a prior meeting, but what Mike's talking about is, there's 3 houses that need new generators. The board blessed putting the new generators in, probably back at the June meeting. I'm pretty sure it was a June meeting, we blessed putting generators in. It's in the minutes we adopted. And we haven't gone out to bid for those generators, so the assistant chief is going to resurrect the old bid package we put out, send it Coughlin and Geckhart to do the updates, and then we're going to go out to bid for 3 generators for Tuckahoe, Chester Heights, and Station 1, which is the main house. Bronxville and the North End both have, generators that were put in a couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So we'll be doing the generator project. As we see sunlight on the North End project, we can move ahead on other projects, and that's what we're kind of doing. Because the lead time on the other projects will be by the time we'll be doing the other projects about the time the North End's finishing up in 2 months.
Yeah, from a priority perspective, I think it's generators, Tuckahoe,
Right,
and then the floor over at,
Tuckahoe.
well, that's what I mean by Tuckahoe. So it'd be generators, the floor in Tuckahoe, and then the floor in Chester Heights.
Yeah. Yeah, we have the ramp out on the Tuckahoe Fire Station needs to be replaced, and when you do the ramp, we have to cut into the floor and lower the floor down a little bit. The floor is damaged. So, that's where we are. We have payment of bills, so we have to review the bills up here, and I guess we should open up now for public comment while the board's reviewing the bills. And the chief has already gone through each one of these bills and reviewed them. After John has reviewed them, they've gone to the chief signed off on them, and now we get a chance.
There is one I have a sticker, I just wanted to double check the numbers. I believe it's the, no, there was the one that we had the credit for quite a while. I just wanted to double check and make sure. I'm a little confused. You're showing a negative, and I don't know if she totaled up right, so I just have a little note on
That
that.
was what, the trailers?
No, it is, I'm blank on the company.
All right.
Was it the Atlantic Detroit? Somebody, we had a fairly good size credit because of overpayments in the past, but then we finally reached that and then went a little on. I just wanted to double check to make sure we're not gonna end up overpaying again.
Yeah. Okay, so we're at the point of the meeting where it's the opportunity for the public to address the board. Mr. Wolf?
Thank you, Chairman Winter. My name is Thomas Wolf. I'm a resident of the town of Eastchester and, of course, of the fire district, those two entities being coterminous. I will start by picking up from where the discussion was about the election.
Okay.
I believe it was Commissioner Baker who referred to the fact that the governor could really pocket veto it, and that is correct in a sense, definitely is correct, and because after the legislature adjourns, there is no way for a bill to be sent back if the governor vetoes it, and therefore the governor must sign the bill, approve the bill, otherwise it's dead. Now, what is actually meant by final adjournment of the legislature as it's written in the written in the New York State Constitution, I don't know. But no bill shall become a law after the final adjournment of the legislature unless approved by the governor within 30 days after such adjournment. Now, I don't know what it's meant by final adjournment. Does this mean the final adjournment, let's say, for this year's session, or regular session, or special session? I don't know. I mean, that would depend. It would seem, if it was just for this year, that, and by the way, this bill, since it's not a controversial bill, being approved 142-0 in the Assembly, it's being held, at least as of the end of last week. It had not been enrolled and sent to the governor, and I'm sure the executive chamber has something to do with that. But getting on to the impact of the bill, right now, up currently, until this law is enacted and the two commissioners of the Westchester County Board of Elections approve it in writing, if they do approve it, we have 5 polling places. With this law is enacted and the two commissioners approve, we will have 16 polling places. And I've been trying to get, and somewhat successfully, a official confirmation from the Westchester County Board of Elections on that. I see in the proposed budget for 2014 that there is a reduction in line 409, having elections and referendums. And I don't think that you can go from $10,000 down to $6,000. I respectfully submit for an election that goes from 5 polling places to 16 polling places. In addition, currently the hours are 2 to 9, and you're going to now go from 6 in the morning till 9 at night, plus a little setup time and a little breakdown time at the end of the day. That's 16 hours. Currently, the poll workers, et cetera, get paid for the general election for a 16-hour day, $225. There is in the law, for town law, that the poll workers for election will get paid $50
Per day.
for the day. You divide 16 into 50, that comes up to $3 an hour versus the approximately $14 an hour that people get from the Westchester County Board of Elections. I don't think I have to say anything more about that, because obviously we're not going to pay $3 an hour if we're going to pay anybody.
Right. The way we did that last year was they don't define what a day is. So you could have 3 workers work a day, equal 1 day.
Okay, well, what do you call it now? It's 3 shifts?
Yeah, 3 shifts.
Okay, well, fine. It's still
going to be a higher number.
It's still going to be more than $6,000 if it's $10,000 for this year. So I wanted to make that comment on that. And I will keep track of what progress or lack of progress is being made in Albany. On another subject, I'd like to find out whether, based upon our projections right now, whether we're going to be over budget or under budget by the end of the year. I know I've read what it said here, but what's our best estimate, on that?
Well, we're doing the construction out of the reserve, so my guess is we're going to be under budget. John?
I would think we're going to go up.
All right.
I don't think it's going to be material. Is it going to be material?
How many construction are we
Well, okay. Well,
Right now, we're at
The big item, we know the medicals, good for the end of the year. We know, the retirement number for this year is going to be just about our budget. So, I would think we'd be under budget. I don't know if it's a lot, it's too early to tell, so that 4 months to run. So,
I'm happy to hear that. Perhaps we won't have to go out for a tan or as big a tan as before. So finally, on another subject, it's my understanding that we're still having a little difficulty with getting a physician.
with getting,
Physician.
Yes.
physician. Actually, I think we've got the current physician seems to be status quo. He's happy with status quo. It seems that he hasn't really pushed back. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing as far as treating the membership and doing the physicals, and but it's one of the functions the board has to do is go find a physician, and it's just, it's on the list. It's not an easy task. Like the chief keeps asking, I think we've asked the union to check around who other districts, use, and I haven't heard a lot of feedback from anyone with a good solution.
May I take another 10 seconds?
Sure.
I don't think it's completely accurate to state that the town, meaning the town of Eastchester, guarantees the payment of the taxes to the Eastchester Fire District. What they do is they will go after people who haven't paid their taxes, but we won't get the money until they get the money.
Correct, unlike the village of Bronxville and the school
It's-
district.
It's not a case of subrogation.
Right.
What do you call it? I think that, or something like that, that terminology. Mr. Poor would know more about that than I would.
Right.
Thank you.
For those who are, there's a unique thing in Bronxville where the residents, some residents might realize this, the village is actually on the hook to give the school its funding regardless of whether it gets it or not. It's a quirk. There's only a few municipalities in New York that have this coterminous situation. I think that's pretty much it. But we don't have that pleasure in the fire district. It's the town collects it and passes it along. Okay, anybody else would like to address the board? Mr. Wolf, Mr. DeFelice.
It's minus. Right, but we did accumulate.
So does he know this? Does he know this? Does he know this?
Yes, no, it's been going on. We've had credit since he took over. She had been overpaying us.
Right, so we don't need to clarify anything with John tonight.
I want to.
That's what I'm saying, so just
We should give him-
leave it out. Bring it over.
If he can, okay.
Peter DeFelice, 24 Channing Place. I first would like to congratulate our Deputy Treasurer, John, for making up a beautiful financial statement. It is indeed, and it really takes out, brings to people's attention everything that's being spent. Now, I want to make a comparison between what the town of Eastchester shows in their report and what John has done here. We have about 3 pages indicating what the P&L. Now, the town of Eastchester, the controller, sends out a statement here to Lake Isle. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 items, which comprises all the activities of Lake Isle. I'd also like to bring to the attention of the police officer addressed the board that there was a grant that was not followed up. It's been my experience that I've had experience at the town at Eastchester. Assemblywoman Portland had supposedly donated for $100,000 to the town. I've asked the town if they got the money. Nobody knows. I called Pauline's office. Pauline's office. She said, I just proposed the thing. It goes up to the governor. If he signs it, it goes through. I don't follow through along where it's going to go. And I've heard in the past that Senator Klein has a good reputation, that he states, goes have pictures with the different groups, the fire, the police department, that he's made grants, and he never follows through. So I don't know how true that is, but that's for what it's worth. Then another thing I want to find out if what you have mentioned tonight about the that you sent out a letter to the firemen regarding the back monies that was given to them. Now, sending a letter, you're not going to get a response.
Well, in this case, we will, because we sent out a letter to 22 members, former members, and we advised them that they have to come current on their health care premium that we have not been billing them for. If they do not come current on the health care premium, we are obligated to terminate that insurance. So it's incumbent on these folks who get the letter to send in the monthly premiums. The last thing we want to do is terminate the insurance. We'd rather they pay their monthly premiums. We'd rather do that before we go back and look back in time. We want to just make sure everybody's current with their monthly premiums.
I appreciate that very much, but my thought is that can't you tie up their monies that they're getting every month? Could that be tied up as long as they do? Just a question. I don't know if it can be done. Or
No,
can't.
the retirement system is the retirement system. We have no ability to go and seek money from the retirement system without the okay of the member. So we're going to the members and asking them, the former members, not the former retirees, and asking them to process paperwork that really should have been processed when they left the department more efficiently. And so if they process that paperwork, we will not have to bill them. It'll come out of their retirement. It'll be cleaner for everyone.
The state pension system, out of courtesy, will allow the retired employee to deduct their medical directly from their pension statement if they elect to. So it's a courtesy. That's the way we're going to prefer
How
doing
far
it.
did you get with the former fire commissioner Femley, that he's owing all that money? Did any conclusion come on that?
We've had with a series of communications over the summer. In fact, today we got another communication, and that their counsel has conceded a point to us that we were, how the zero option is calculated, and so we're going to come around to a settlement, not a settlement, but a methodology of deducting monies over time. So their law firm has agreed to allow us to deduct money over time. And that just happened today. I just got notice today.
And I'd like to bring to the people's attention that we're all taxpayers and we're all residents of Eastchester, Bronxville, and Tuckahoe. In the town of Eastchester, we have but one Eastchester. We have but one Lake Isle. We have but one auditor looking over the books. Yet I've got 3 different revenues. One from the controller's office, which is marked here as Lake Isle. The other one is from the enterprise fund of Lake Isle. Another one from the town itself. Now, this is interesting. The controller's report for 2011 shows they took in $3,622,851,000. The expenses were $4,689,000. There was a loss of $1,066,000.
Mr.
Go back to
DeFelice, the only issue here is we are the Eastchester Fire District, and I kind of gather where you're going from. But the only thing substantive is I don't know what accounting firm they're using there. Your point of reference might be interesting, what accounting firm it is. I know who we're using, but we're really the wrong body to be with wrong venue to be dealing with a Lake Isle issue.
I realize that, but this is an information that it applies to everyone that lives in Eastchester, Bronxville, and Tuckahoe. It's something as a report, and there's a report here is done for the fire department, so that people should know what's going on in the town of Eastchester, because they're taxpayers, and they should know what's going on. I've done a lot of research work, and I've got in here things that are unbelievable, that goes on in the town of Eastchester. And we've gone to the point of I and Mr. Mose have gone to the point that we've contacted the controller to go look into the financial affairs. Now, as I say, this is important for everybody, And I just want to point on the last minute, before you cut me off, don't get like Colavito, that he only allows me 5 minutes, and he hesitates. He won't go further. And I call him the dictator, and after, if he's elected, we'll have to call him emperor. So let's take it easy. I just want to point out, want to go back. As I said, one shows $1,066,000 loss. One shows $403,000 loss. And the other one shows $400,000 loss. Why? I've taken this up at the town board meetings. I've asked them if they have taken this up with the controller, and I've also taken up with the advisory board. Did they do anything about it? No. You mean there's a large discrepancy and they do nothing about it? That shows how they are.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that. You can air your point of view. We're the wrong venue, but I truly respect the time and effort you put in for the citizens of this town doing your research. At your age, doing the research is quite phenomenal, and you are remarkable for doing it.
Thank you very much for giving me the time.
Good evening. My name is Nina Maldari, and I'm the daughter of firefighter Phil Maldari. I'm here tonight on behalf of myself and my two brothers because we wanted to enlighten you on what it is like living in a family when your dad has cancer. Last August, when my father was diagnosed with bladder cancer, we were very frightened. All we knew was cancer kills. I remember looking at my dad for the first time ever. My dad, the bravest man to me, looked scared. Thank God for the wonderful doctors at Sloan who helped him. The worrying never goes away, though. Every 3 months, my dad has a scope inserted into his bladder to check for tumors. Every 3 months, we sit on pins and needles waiting for the results. Now my dad can't go for his check because you terminated him and our medical insurance. So far, so good. My dad is still in remission, but is not cured by any means. His reoccurrence rate is over 70%, so we live each day in fear as to when his cancer will return. It sickens me that firefighters are heroes. They serve the community, putting others before themselves. Why would a fire department turn their back on a fellow firefighter with cancer?
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Patricia Maldari. I am the wife of firefighter Phil Maldari. I would first like to totally agree with everything that my daughter has stated. We totally live our lives very worried every day that my husband's cancer will return. To be clear, because there seemed to be confusion amongst the fire department, that my husband was cured. According to the American Cancer Society, which I called, and the doctor at Sloan Kettering, who's a specialist, there is no cure for cancer. And anyone who seems to think cancer can be cured is quite ignorant. My husband is currently in remission, though. I am sure that you feel, as commissioners, that you serve the department fairly and you always follow the rules accordingly. And that said, I would like to ask you, in general business, banking, law, delis, gas stations, if an employee were to steal funds, would you say he would be fired?
We're not going to comment. It's just we can't comment
comment?
on a personnel matter, so we're not going to comment on this, Mr.
All right.
Maldari.
Okay. Well, normally he would be fired. And I would assume the same would hold true at the Eastchester Fire Department. Chief Grogan, over the last 8 years,
I think you
has
should be
taken
careful when you-
EMT pay.
I think
the town of Eastchester needs to know, because we're sitting here talking about a budget issue and money, and 8 years of EMT pay was taken when he wasn't recertified as an EMT.
I think you're off base with your comment on.
I'm not off base. 8 years. He was just recertified February of this year. 8 years. So you're sitting here saying men have to come up with extra money. Retirees that live maybe month to month, they have to find money. But we have a chief for 8 years who knew Who knew?
You're,
So
you're,
I have a right to speak. This is my First Amendment right. Just like you have a right to your secret meetings when you terminate people.
but you have a liability as well when you talk
Sue
about
me.
someone.
I have nothing. You fired my husband. Sue me. Are you going to sue me? We have nothing. My husband has cancer. We have no income. Are you going to sue me? I have a right to let the people know in Eastchester what's going on.
I don't think you have a right to malign somebody.
I'm not maligning. These are payroll records.
You know, I don't think you have any agreements in front of you or any documents that.
I have the documents, and so does Jonathan Bandler. We have the documents.
Fine.
The documents have been foiled. We have the documents.
Okay, fine.
Foiled from when?
Jonathan Bandler took care of that.
Okay, well, we don't need to go tit for tat here as far as your
Okay.
information. I'm just saying to you, Chief
Well,
Grogan
if
is
we're
a
by
highly
the rules
respected
and we're
member of the
following everything by the rules accordingly, then I feel that if my husband wasn't granted one day past in Article 73, but yet somebody can misuse funds and take funds knowingly. Once an EMT, always an EMT, as it was quoted to the auditor of New York State Controller's Office. And that's okay. That's allowed in the fire department. That's a shame.
Okay, would anybody else like to address the board?
David Levy, 220 Hillside Place, up at Tuckahoe. I want to thank you very much for the civic lesson when you were explaining on how the votes go with the budget. I think it's important that the community knows, because too many people sit here and they don't understand why certain things go the way they do when they talk about the budget. And I thank you very much for that, because that's how people learn, and they need to be informed. All right? The law says you must vote on adopting this budget tonight. You don't necessarily have to adopt it. You can vote nay, but you have to have a vote tonight. Okay? And once this is a tentative budget, if you accept it tonight, yes, before the final vote, you can make any changes you think need to be made in that budget, and you must inform the community. Like you said, but I don't know if everybody grasped that. Okay, well, on a quick votes, even if there are 16 polling places, they can all be in 5 places. Because you go to the middle school when we would vote, and there'd be 5 polling places in that one room. Okay, so people have to understand, just because you have 16 polling districts, it's not 16 individual places for the votes to be, unless you choose to do it that way.
Well, no, gentlemen, Dave,
First of
address
all,
the
I'm here
board.
addressing the board. Thank you, Tom.
But
Okay,
Dave,
I don't want to
just
get
interrupt
off.
for a second. The way I envision this to happen, and I could be wrong, but I think next year, if this bill passes, when you show up at a polling place, you'll get handed a card. There'll be a green machine, and each of the people who are doing the the people who sign you in and check your name will hand you a card for the Eastchester Fire District. You'll give the card to somebody standing next to a green machine. They'll let you in. And so we'll have just to man the machines with people to accept those cards and let you in. I think that's how it's going to play out.
Hopefully, it's going to play out. It was my understanding when it plays out, it's going to be in November, along with every other election. You're going to be in the same machine as everybody else.
No.
Well,
Technically, you would hope for that, but that's not how it's going to play out.
that's the
first.
government view. All right.
I'm sorry, Dave. Let me interrupt
That's
you.
all right. Well, I'm glad to see Station 5 finally coming along. But when you get to do the kitchen and everything, think for the future. Like, sometimes it's better to put a terracotta floor down and spend the money today that's going to last 30 years or 50 years than to save a couple of dollars and put a tile floor down you have to change every 3 years or every 5 years. Also, when you buy a refrigerator or a stove, buy the top of the line that's going to last 50 years, not something that's cheap because it's saving us money. Because in the long run, what's cheap today is very expensive tomorrow.
100%. That's why we went with 18 gauge stainless.
No, I'm not asking. This is supposed to be comments from the public, not bantering.
Okay.
All right. I notice it now. You're getting to the point where you're going to control the board 100%. I see the way certain things are working, and I agree with that. Other things seem to be, from my point of view, seem to be too personal and too vindictive with certain personnel. Again, it's my feeling. And I think that, things went status quo for so long, and like anything else, things go status quo, and accountability falls to the side. Okay, so a breath of fresh air happens, and it's good for it, even if it's drastic. But sometimes there needs to be a little humility, and when you're on top, you shouldn't step on everybody, or you shouldn't step on certain people who you, as chair, have a personal idea about. Because now that everybody else on the board comes under your umbrella, you have ultimate control. And I wouldn't say like Calavita, I'd say more like Kavanaugh. And I think one should watch that doesn't happen. Okay? When somebody comes up here and speaks, they're speaking what's in their mind and their heart. It's very hard to bring somebody up on charges that they said things maliciously. They're speaking from their heart, not necessarily their brain, their heart and their mind. So sometimes people say things that they're trying to get their point across.
I think we've been compassionate in doing what we're supposed to be doing.
No, I'm saying when other people come up here and speak, they cannot, I forget the word now, when you take an elected officer and are appointed to a certain fiduciary responsible job, you give up certain rights. And one of them is the right to claim slander. All right.
Not exactly accurate.
What else?
Not as an employee.
I understand now, I was going to ask about the grant committee, but it was put right to me. People make promises of grants and they never follow through. So it doesn't matter how many times you apply, the politician's going to tell you, yeah, because he wants your vote. Okay, so, all right. There's two other things here. You're dealing with Chase Manhattan Bank, and you're dealing with automatic, well, it wouldn't be deduction, but they're taking the money out for payroll on an automatic call. All right, now, I was a fiduciary responsible person for a very large trust in the city for a number of years, and we had over $3 million with Chase Manhattan Bank on 3 different accounts. The excess didn't matter. But 2 years ago, out of the blue, Chase decided to start charging us $30,000 a quarter to manage these funds that they were making quite a bit of money on.
Yep.
So I don't want to name names or anything, but I think that maybe for the benefit of the money, the fiduciary responsibility that you have, you look at other banks and see where we can get a better bang for our buck, because Chase is sitting on our money and they're making money on our money, and then for them to charge us for letting them use our money to make money on, I think is wrong.
We have an agreement with Chase where we fall under an admissible relationship, and they don't get charged.
All I say is shop around, okay? There's some other banks out there that are very good banks and looking to get your business. And Michael, catch me one day around town, and I'll look at that hole in the hose, and I'll sketch something up for you can send to the engineers, because I did infills for years in big office buildings, closed stairwells, open stairwells, and I'll give you something to give to the engineers.
We're talking about approximately 10 by 10.
Doesn't matter, I have to see what's under what's the concrete looks like, so, you can be the well or the mold.
Thank you for the offer.
Always welcome, Dave.
Okay, Paul, did you want to speak?
Good evening. My name is Paul Ranello, and I'm a lieutenant in the Eastchester Fire Department and a resident of the town. And as you're all aware, yesterday we recognized the 12th anniversary of the attacks on September 11, 2001. At that time, I put thoughts to paper, And it has become a tradition for me, either here or at our union meeting in September, to read those words that I put down those years ago. And I'd just like to have the opportunity to do that tonight. From Wednesday, September 12th, 2001, through Sunday, September 16th, the Eastchester Fire Department sent a fully manned engine and ladder company to cover Bronx firehouses or to stand by at Yonkers Raceway for deployment. I was at Station 1 at the time and remember feeling how anxious I felt for these mutual aid companies, not knowing what might happen to them. On Thursday, September 13th, the Mount Vernon Fire Department, Local 107, in conjunction with the Westchester Professional Firefighters Coalition, was able to contact officials in New York City in order to organize a relief effort. If they're getting approval from officials in New York City if they're getting approval to do so, they contacted all the professional firefighter unions in Westchester. In a matter of a few hours, 120 firefighters from all over Westchester met at Mount Vernon Station 3. Included in that number were 10 firefighters from the Eastchester Fire Department. 2 of our members were able to secure 3 buses at no cost. Shortly before 7 p.m., the 3 buses left Mount Vernon with a state police escort to Manhattan. Almost from the time we turned onto the West Side Highway, people lined both sides of the street with signs and flags, many thanking us and cheering. Signs read, "God bless you," and "You're our heroes." The buses parked off Hudson Street onto Beach Street. Upon arrival, all firefighters were organized into 10-man companies with either a lieutenant or captain in charge. I was in charge of the Eastchester contingent. We walked from the buses to the staging area, 1 block from what has become known as Ground Zero. Along the way, people on the sidewalks clapped and thanked us, offered us water, food, gloves, masks, anything else we might need to do our work. Walking along, we can see and smell the smoke from what was once the World Trade Center. At the staging area, we saw an engine and ladder truck on the side street. The truck's aerial was mangled and bent over the cab. The engine was recognizable only by the front part of the cab where the driver and officer would sit. Everything else had been crushed to about 5 feet high. On the officer's door, someone had written in memory of the lieutenant and firefighters who had apparently all been killed. After getting permission to proceed, we passed a parking lot filled with burnt-out cars. We stood in front of 3 World Financial Center, now used as a rest and rehab station. Construction workers cut up the fallen North Bridge. I'd just like to mention at this time that Dave Levy spent many weeks down at the site at that time. He's a iron worker. In preparation to move it out of the way in order to gain access to the area of debris behind it with heavy equipment. We walked between 3 and 4 World Financial Center along the Winter Garden atrium and into 2 World Financial Center to the front entrance on West Street. From this point, we got an unobstructed view of the massive destruction. From this entrance at 2 World Trade Center, a distance of about 400 feet, were steel box beams lying parallel about 3 feet apart on top of 10 to 15 feet of concrete and other pulverized debris. There were several hundred rescuers in about a dozen bucket brigades removing debris from around the 7-story exoskeleton of the tower and passing it down to the front of the financial center, where it was dumped and the empty buckets returned to the front of the line. Iron workers cut up steel beams, which would be passed down the line and thrown on the pile. We filled in on several of these lines, balancing ourselves on the box beams. In some areas, you could look through the rubble and see the remains of a fire truck or ambulance. Several of our firefighters attempted to tunnel beneath the box beams in order to look for victims below us. Every so often, someone would yell to be quiet. The generators and power tools would be shut down, and everyone would stop working and just listen for any sounds from the debris pile. After a minute or so, work would continue. Looking up and around from the middle of Ground Zero gave a clear view of the destruction. Every window facing the Twin Towers had been blown out, and chunks of buildings had been gouged out from falling debris. The sides of the remaining buildings were covered in a thin coat of powder that could be seen floating in the air through the glow of floodlights. It was several inches thick for many blocks around. Despite the hard work, early Friday morning, it got noticeably cooler, and about 2 a.m. it started to rain. A drizzle at first. Suddenly it started getting heavy, making footing treacherous, and since we were working in T-shirts, the rain just made us wetter and more uncomfortable. An FDNY chief officer called off operations, and our chief officers decided it was time to go back. So we picked up our gear and headed back to the buses. On the buses, we were tired, cold, wet. There was little, if any, talking on the return trip to Mount Vernon. I began to wonder what we had accomplished by going down there. We moved perhaps a couple tons of debris, a literal drop in the bucket of the estimated 1.2 million tons of rubble. We had saved no lives, only one body had been recovered. Yet for 8 hours, we had been willing participants in a piece of history, something people will talk about long after we are gone. We were the first group of firefighters to go down to ground zero, but not the last. 2 shifts of Westchester firefighters, Eastchester included, per day responded to the World Trade Center site over the course of the next several days. The only reason this effort was discontinued was the FDNY went to a 24-hour schedule with half their personnel working at any one time, meaning they had enough manpower to send to the site and man their firehouses. Whatever needed to be done, or whatever we were asked to do, we would not have hesitated on this new day of infamy, September 11, 2001. Respectfully submitted, Paul Ranello.
Well, thank you for your time, your service and memorializing that. It's well said. Any other public comment? Okay, we have the payment of bills, but looking for a motion to adopt the draft budget we received tonight for a total expenditure of $16,882,156. And we'll have a budget hearing on October 15th to come back with recommendations after that. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to adopt the budget.
Can I just comment? Wait, are we sure if we're stuck here because, the work...
We're not going up, we know that.
Well, I just wonder if there was certain,
We can move around the lines, but we're not going to come up, so. A second?
Can I just ask you a question? On that voting, Commissioner Napolitano, you said when the individual goes to vote, they're going to get a card to vote for the commissioner's election. Is that what you said?
No,
No, he said it
No,
actually.
I said I'm guessing, and my theory is that, and you're quite familiar with this, Tony, because you've been there, Anthony, you've been doing this forever. My guess is we'll probably just let the county people sign people in for their normal election.
Right.
And then they'll hand them a card to go for like an index card and say, here, when you want to vote for the fire district, the machine's over there, and present this card. That's my guess.
Because anyone comes to vote in November in the town of Eastchester is eligible, whether they're Tuckahoe, Eastchester, or Bronxville, just to automatically vote for the commissioners if they want.
Correct.
So in other words, that card just indicates that they registered in and they're going to the other machine?
When they sign the book.
Right.
I'm
And that
sure-
card indicates for them that they could go to the other machine to vote for the
Correct.
commissioner? Okay.
I think that's going to be the easy mechanical way of doing it. That's how the other district does it that has this. In upstate New York, that's what they do. So I'm assuming we're going to do something similar. I don't know. So on the table right now is a motion to adopt the proposed draft budget for the tune of $16,882,000, spot 156. Mr. Napolitano had a first. Anybody seconding it? Okay, he seconded it. Stephen Baker seconds it. Commissioner Stiegelman?
Aye.
Commissioner Napolitano?
Aye.
Commissioner Baker? Aye. And I'll say aye. So this budget will carry, and then we'll talk on how to trim it or change it on October 15th. We have the payment of the bills. Have you gentlemen reviewed the bills?
I have.
And Mike, you had the,
Pulled out.
what's that?
I pulled out one.
Mike, I'm sorry?
I didn't see the one that he pulled out.
Okay.
it's just the one that we removed from the list.
Stewart and Stephen Power Products.
Needs to do a little clarification. It's actually one that's been,
Paid twice.
well,
Kind of.
quite a while back when John came in, there was, turns out we had quite a credit because of previous overpayments. It's a confusing bill. I just want at this point
So we'll remove that
We're
bill.
not sure if it's correct, that's all. I
Okay.
don't think it's,
So let's go back to the bill payments. How much is that bill amount?
Well, that's the issue. We don't know whether it's a credit or a bill.
But what's the name of the
well,
bill?
I'm sure, I will say there is a charge because we've used up the
Gentlemen, what's the
credit.
name of the bill, the company?
Stewart and Stevenson equivalent.
Okay, Stewart and
It's
Stevenson.
gonna be on that, yeah.
Stewart and Stevenson was $1,492.70.
I believe it should be that.
Okay, so we're gonna do this.
Got to pull that line item out.
I'm pulling that line item, 14,492.27. Okay, so I'd look for a motion, we approve these bills with the exception of $1,492.27 prior to reducing that $1,492. It would have been $215,335, $215,003.35, so we have to knock out 1,492 from that, and I would make an extra motion that we pay these bills. All you guys good?
Yep. Make a motion to pay the bills.
Okay, Jerry, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so that's Jerry Napolitano, and it's Richie Stiegelman first. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Jerry, aye?
Aye.
Okay, so we're good on the bills. All right, so I think we should adjourn the meeting in a moment of silence for those who lost their lives on 9/11 and for the family members have find some peace in their lives for those who survived. Oh, a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Jerry, a second to adjourn the meeting?
Second.
All-
Aye.
Aye.